And welcome to the third edition of Herald-Standard.com's Penguins Shootout. I'm your host, Rob Burchianti, and with me again is Herald-Standard.com sports writer Derek Day. And this week, the big topic, new conferences, new divisions, whatever you want to call them. The NHL has proposed, was it 4 conferences, I believe, and the Penguins were worried about how they would match up with their rivals, and they wanted to stay with the Flyers and teams like that, Washington, Rangers, or whatever. And it turns out they're going to get an awful lot of taste of each other in the way the new setup is. You want to talk about the new setups here a little bit, the proposed ones that the players still have to okay?
Yeah, this happened last night, Monday night, December 6th, as we're filming this on the following Tuesday, of course, in the regular meeting between the Board of Governors. And, of course, as we mentioned in our first episode, this was something a long time coming, since Winnipeg now has a team, the former Atlanta Thrashers team, and they came up with a new proposal for they got rid of the sixth division format, and they came up with this new calling it conferences, which, whichever way you want to call it, it's still just four divisions, 4 conferences, and pretty much as far as the Penguins are concerned, it's probably about as good of the outcomes they could have hoped for. They keep pretty much everybody in the division. They just added Washington, who, of course, there's a big rivalry there already, and Carolina Hurricanes, and that's pretty much it for the Penguins. So
that leaves the Penguins in the division, and they will be in there with New Jersey, Philadelphia, New York Rangers, New York Islanders, Washington, and Carolina. Now, the proposal was that they'll play each other 6 times. Is that how they
yeah. Well, they wanted to get this more of a balanced schedule. But with 30 teams and you divide that by 4, there's going to be some imbalance in terms of the number of teams. The Penguins division only has, has 7 teams, and the other Eastern Conference, the rest of the teams, there's 8 of them there. You have Boston, Montreal, Toronto, Ottawa, Buffalo, Florida, and Tampa Bay. There's going to be some imbalance there. In the Penguins' case, they will play conference games. They'll play them 6 times each, 3 home and 3 away, I'm guessing. But the other ones, they'll play, some teams they'll play 6 times a year, other times they'll play 5, and they'll just rotate who those are every other year, of course. But I think they went this way mostly because it gives them some flexibility between teams. There's some rumors out there that Phoenix might not be long for Phoenix. They might be moving the Coyotes somewhere. Quebec has been thrown out there. Of course, the former home of the Nordiques back in the day.
That's the one thing about this thing. When you rearrange all these conferences because of Winnipeg, you never know when somebody else is going to switch or everything. And then what do? Do you rearrange them again, or
I think, like I said, I think that's why they did it this particular way. With the imbalance, they have more flexibility with just 2 conferences as opposed to the 6 divisions like before, not necessarily confined to one geographic name or location, which, even though that's the way it kind of panned out, everybody's in the same general area, but aside from the other teams in the former Eastern Conference, I guess it'll be by the time next year rolls around, since you have Boston, all the Canadian teams, Boston, Buffalo, and then you just have all the rest of them kind of lumped in there. Two of the Florida teams, the Panthers and the Lightning. But it gets the job done in the sense that a lot of them are in the same time zone. They don't have as many Western swings where their fans, particularly younger fans, that was the big concern. Younger fans not being able to stay up and watch, and really it didn't really affect too much of the Eastern Conference teams. But the teams, the biggest beefs were Columbus and Detroit. With it being in the Western Conference, they have to make those trips out west. More so than any other team, crossing 3 time zones and not being able to have those prime time games in front of their fans.
Yeah, I guess no system's perfect, but a lot of the players seem to favor it from what I heard. Is that what you? I mean, a lot of them seem to like the way this is set up.
Yeah, a lot of them they get to go to cities every year. That's another thing. They'll see every team at least once, but I'm not too much of a fan of that, in the sense that you only play. For example, the Pittsburgh Pirate. I can't get any of them right. Penguins.
Let's not mix up the Penguins with the Pirates, because it's night and day there.
Yeah, but they'll play Boston, Montreal, Toronto, Ottawa, Buffalo, Florida, Tampa Bay each twice, home and home series. Same as the rest of the league. That's kind of my only my only beef with that, it becomes more like baseball. That's why I was thinking Pirates there, because it seems the Pirates are always playing the Cubs and everybody in the division so much, and not everybody else just kind of in there.
Yeah. Well, and as if you don't get enough of your own division, the way this is set up, the way they have it proposed, is in the playoffs. The first 2 rounds of the playoffs would be in your own conference. The top 4 teams in each conference they have set up would make the playoffs. In the first 2 rounds, 1 would play 4, 2 would play 3, and then the survivors would play, and you'd have 1 conference champion. So here, you've played these teams all year, and now you're going to play them again for 2 more rounds of the playoffs. That's a lot of playing against the. That's the only thing. That's the one thing I really don't like about this system. I wish they'd mix up the playoffs a little bit, where you're not just playing. I guess you're saying, well, that's your conference. You have to win your conference, but there's 4 conferences. It's just divisions. It's not really conferences, really, when you look at it that way. So I don't like that. That's just too much of playing a section of teams over and over and over again.
Yeah, and it gets better. There's talk of, after you have your conference champion, there'll be 4 teams left for the Stanley Cup, and there's talk out there that might reseed after that fact. They don't know how they're going to do it yet, but then you'll have them playing each other. You might end up something as absurd, as to what we're used to. You might end up with Philadelphia playing Montreal for the Stanley Cup, or Pittsburgh versus Tampa Bay, teams that used to be in the same Eastern Conference.
So you want to have sort of an East-West type of a championship, which is what most leagues look for, so something to that effect. But I don't know. Overall, I like it. I just don't like the play. I wish they would tweak the playoff format a little bit. What do you think of the thing overall?
I can't really be much happier in terms of who the Penguins are grouped with. They're keeping everything pretty much intact. As we know, over the years, plenty of good playoff moments in that old divisional format. Patrick division, you have Penguins Flyers. That's always a brawl. And even with those deep playoff matchups with the Rangers, remember the Adam Graves slash on Mario Lemieux that presented some bad blood. And then you have the Islanders, of course, knocking out possibly the greatest Penguins team ever assembled in '93. So
huge upset,
And the Capitals, we all know about those playoff series, of course. So I like it in the fact that you'll be able to see them in the playoffs, because as much as heated as divisional games are already, they'll just kind of step up another notch in the playoffs. But I'm not a fan of the offsetting, the reseeding talk, like you said, as far as for the Stanley Cup. It should be conference versus conference. Now, whatever they name them, we could go on forever about that. And
like we said, the players still have to okay this, but I think the consensus is they probably will. Getting just back to the Penguins now, let's see what they did in the last week. Since the last time we talked, they went 5-2. Of course, Lemieux's back now. They had a couple of overtime wins.
Crosby, you mean?
Lemieux, Lemieux probably still could play if he wanted to, but Crosby returned. Crosby scored 2 goals his first game back, and since then he hasn't scored, but he has racked up a lot of assists. The Penguins still sit first overall in the mixing up. In the East, is that what it is?
They're still in the Eastern Conference right
they
now.
Have 36 points. They're second overall behind I think it's Minnesota, and they had a couple key games, very notable games this week. We're going to go over real quick. One was on Saturday, November 26th. They had an OT win against the Canadiens. In that game, Chris Letang, late in the game, was skating over, and Max Pacioretty took a headshot at him, clear as day, and
broke
smashed.
His nose.
Yeah, broke his nose. There's blood on the ice. Referees call nothing, and no penalty on the play whatsoever, which is absurd. He comes back later in the game in overtime, and then what looked like a bad call. Chris Letang not Chris Letang. It was
James Neal dug it
James
out.
Neal. That's right. James Neal did a spinning shot. It looked like the puck was held by Carey. And
Carey Price, the
goaltender. Letang pulls it out, though. The referee never blew the whistle and scores the winning goal. So there was 2 controversial plays in there.
Well, I got a third for you, but go ahead.
Yeah, but we'll get to that, too. But the Letang thing is funny, because here you go again. You have this, in my eyes, here's this old thing. It's late in the game. We don't want to make a call, to decide the game. Letang has the puck. So he's skating in with the puck. Referees are looking at him. And he gets smashed in the face. I don't know what angle the referees are looking. If you're standing on your head, it still looks like a headshot. And they call nothing. I'm sick of this stuff where late in the game they want to swallow the whistles and let the players decide. You're not deciding the game, and you don't make a call like that. It was just justice that the Penguins won that game. What was your view of that?
Yeah, I thought I'd share your view in the fact that it wasn't two wrongs don't make a right, but it was fitting considering up to that point the Penguins had already had 2 goals waved off.
Right.
And then on top of that, James Neal was fined after the game, $2,500 for a high stick to PK Subban.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah, he was called for high sticking, but what nobody saw, or the referees didn't see at the time, was that they're along the boards, along the left wing, digging out the puck. Subban comes up behind James Neal, kicks his skates out from under him. Neal loses balance and then swings with his right hand, and had the stick in his hand, swinging up around, caught Subban up in the helmet. I mean, he had a visor on, didn't hurt him all, but Subban was doing his best Oscar impersonation, trying to get the acting award there. Got the penalty and all, but Subban has a history of this. I mean, he did it against the Penguins in the playoffs. He pretty much caused Stahl to not come back to the Winter Classic in essence because he injured his foot there, and then subsequently Stahl broke his wrist trying to come back from that. So there's been a history of that as far as what's going on in terms of PK Subban. He has a history, so.
So there was a lot of controversy in that game, and let's go to another game there, because the other game that of note was a 2-1 win over the Capitals. And what was your approach? The Crosby Ovechkin thing again. Crosby wins. Ovechkin didn't play poorly in that game, but what did you think of that game?
It was a hard-fought defensive struggle. As you mentioned, Ovechkin had 1 shot on goal and got the 3rd star somehow. Paul Martin actually ended up with the 1st star, who we had kind of called out in our last episode.
He's been playing a lot better.
He has played well, especially considering Letang and McCulloch are now out. Both sustained concussions, we've now learned, in that Montreal game. But yeah, it was the first time the Penguins won in regulation down there in Washington since 2008. So it was refreshing to see them bring home a win.
And the third game was the red-hot Boston Bruins, the defending champions, played, of course, the Penguins Monday night. And, of course, the Penguins, shorthanded without Letang and McCulloch, like you said, they fall 3-1. And Tim Thomas, incredible, 45 saves. What did that game show? So can you take a lot away from that because Letang wasn't there? Or was it just have to tip your hat to Thomas? Or what did you think of that game?
Well, I think it presented a lot of things. Obviously, injuries, they're not 100%. But it's presenting it showed a disturbing trend, I think, in my opinion, that the Penguins just kind of have been taking second periods off as of late. They did it against the Rangers last week. They
cost them the game 4 goals in a row.
Yeah, 4 goals in the second, and they just kind of did look rather uninspired, I think, last night as well in that second period. But the power play continues to struggle, even with Crosby and Malkin back. But then later, of course, Matt Niskanen took actually got in a fight with Brad Marchand of the Boston Bruins, who came up from behind and tripped Niskanen behind the net. It was a slew foot is what it was. They didn't call it, but they just gave him a 2-minute minor, and it should have been really a match penalty. It's right in the rule book. So I mean, if a match penalty, if you don't know, it's kind of the highest penalty you can get. It's automatic ejection, an automatic suspension pending league review, but it counts as 10 penalty minutes. So it just seems that it was right there on the screen, and I'm right there in front of them on TV, and they didn't call it. A
lot of questions about officiating in our show today. Well, this show went pretty quick. We're running out of time already. I wanted to say, too, if you have anything to say about this show, just look down below where you're watching this and type in a note or whatever if you have any opinions on it. But for now, we'll get back to you in 2 weeks again, near Christmas time.
Ho, ho, ho.
That's right. So, Merry Christmas to everybody. We'll talk to you just before Christmas in a little bit. And this is Rob signing off, and we're in Derek on HeraldStandard.com's Penguins Shootout.